Welcome to the Wealth Rebels show. I am your original Wealth Rebel, the creative rebel that is Emma Wright. One day, Alan, hot off the press here, one day soon to be Emma Louise Falconer again, the elf. I'm in the midst of, as you know, Alan, navigating a divorce. And I'm going to be going back to my roots as the original elf, Emma Louise Falconer, which is the perfect way to go back to self, like in joining the dots. You know, that's what this show is all about. You see, getting back to self, being yourself, and doing what you came here to be and do in the world, and be that epic founder that your life and those around you need to have in their lives, and for those impact ventures to get out into the world and for you to go on and create. So it makes sense for me to come back to being the elf. So hot off the press, you guys get to hear it first, and that's what this show is all about. So today, you're literally being blessed with one of my favorite humans and souls out there, my friend Alan Mead. So, firstly, before I dive into why you're on the show today, Alan, a huge welcome from the elf, from the Wealth Rebel to.
Thank you, Elf. That's great news as well. I'm really excited for you about this, and that's back to self. That's great. That's really good.
I know, I love I love creating little connections like that, and it just feels so perfect for me and for the show and for everyone around that follows the show, taking people back to self. So I've known I've known you, Alan, for years now.
Mm.
Another of the incredible entrepreneurial people that I'm really blessed to meet in real life in North Devon. People talk about North Devon as being quite cut off from the world. It has so many amazing entrepreneurs. Like, it's just incredible. And, having the pleasure of knowing you in real life, the language that Alan talks is just me down to the very core. And recently, Alan and I were guest speakers at the Node Business Boost Day. And I made sure that I sat in on Alan's talk because it was all about time. I was like, okay, Alan talks my language and is about to dive into time, which is the most precious asset outside of the human, outside of the self. Time is the most precious asset because it's all about this human experience, and it's all about making sure that we are here to make the most of our time. And what you said, Alan, in that talk, we've had this conversation since, and this is why I was like, you've got to come onto the podcast and talk about this. Um, because what you say about time, I literally can't say it in one sentence, as you hear right now. I'm a massive oversharer. What you say in one sentence would take me literally a zillion paragraphs. So, because it's like so important that people hear what you say about time, and I wanted you to talk through the time mastery piece. Time mastery is step 3 in my 8-step framework. It's so critical to our route to self, actually. So critical. And the things that you talked about, I was like, oh my goodness, this is pure magic. So without further ado, Alan, welcome to the show. Why don't you start by just sharing a little bit about you and why you love sharing your wisdom on time mastery? Tell us a little bit about Alan Mead before we dive
Okay.
into the teach.
Oh, what a welcome. What a build-up. That's wonderful. Thank you very much indeed, Em. That's a tremendous welcome. I too, actually, I can use 1,000 words when 10 will do, but I will try and keep this short and to the point. Um, in a nutshell, my work now is helping hesitant, uncertain managers become confident managers. And I run a training program called The Confident Manager, and I coach one-to-one as well. And a core fundamental part of the training that I deliver is managing our time. And within that, managing ourselves as well. And we've the choice to either be at the beck and call of everyone else, or we can set our own agenda and plan our time accordingly so that we can make the most of the time that we do have available and not spend all night and all weekend constantly trying to catch up and chasing our tails. My background here is that I had some 30 years working in advertising, mainly for a wonderful local agency called Bray Leno. And I had numerous different roles with my time at Bray Leno. But the thing that I still shiver over slightly is the recollections I have of working at the weekend or working in the evenings. My briefcase always open. And it drove me mad. And it took me a long, long time to master that to a point where now I actually spend the evening with my wife. Or I know that we'll be seeing our kids, so I don't need to worry about the work I've got to do. That's done and dusted. I spend the time with my children. My son would argue my golf is suffering dreadfully, but hey, it's no biggie. So my focus on time is basically to help people master themselves, master the art of being a manager. Very few people get the training they need as they become managers. So I can say I've road tested all of this by getting it wrong at various times when I was a manager and learning by example and learning by failure. So I've distilled it down into the training to help people build, I hope, a more disciplined approach to their time and their time management that in turn will help the team that they're managing, those around them, and most importantly, themselves.
I love that because how can you manage anyone else if you can't manage yourself?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely right. It all starts with us, and we're all brilliant at blaming everyone else for our circumstances. But one of the little mantras that I preach is that life is 10% what happens to us and 90% how we choose to deal with it and respond to it. And especially when it comes down to time, we constantly don't have time. Well, have you stopped to look at why you don't have time? What are you really doing? What are your priorities? And are you focused on them? And too easily, we're distracted by other shiny things or things on the hoover in the moment, rather than focusing on those core priorities.
100% agree. Because the biggest blocker to all of this is our mind. Our
Yeah,
mind is constantly active, and distractions are the biggest blocker to living a life of joy and purpose. Fundamentally, like the distractions are there, and we get distracted by everything, and we're bombarded, and it's not our fault because it's a lot of it. We don't even know we're being bombarded with it as well.
yeah.
There's all one of the things that I want you to share is the iceberg analogy. Okay, the iceberg analogy, and because that for me really opened up to it. I talk about this all the time, and I was like, you need to see Alan's chart, right? Because when you talk about the iceberg, it really helps us to think about why we are doing this to ourselves. Yes, it's so easy to blame, isn't it? Everyone else for our failings as a manager. We don't
Yeah,
have to be a manager for this to be successful. This applies to everybody. You're applying it in what you do with the work that you do in management, in corporate, but this is why you're on the show because this applies to entrepreneurs, to anybody that's running life. Whether you have a business or whether you're a mummy that's running the house at home
yeah,
as
yeah,
well.
absolutely.
It applies to everything because we go around thinking that life's happening to us, but life is not happening to us. We create our own reality. And that's not necessarily just about manifestation here. I'm talking about what you said about the fact that 90% of the time, we're not managing ourselves.
Yeah,
We've been bombarded with things that we don't know by that iceberg analogy and all of the things. So I can't wait to dive into that because you've got some incredible tips as well as we work through this. You know, this was a beautiful presentation, but here I want to talk through it. I want to talk through it with you live and use me as a little bit of
sure.
a way of like bringing this to life for the people that are listening, whether they're listening on YouTube or whether they're listening to the podcast. Before we dive into that, I just want to share your little cheeky story that we had at the start before we came on air, because this is really funny actually. Because this happened to me maybe 4 weeks ago, and you were involved in that as well. You said, this morning, can I share the story? Do you want you share your story actually? What happened to you this morning?
I'm doing a 2 day session today. I'm doing the confident manager with one of the businesses that are based here in the Node Co-work building in Barnstable. And it's 2 half-day sessions, 9 till 1 each day. And I don't like to be rushed. I like to take my time to get set up and get in the zone and also set the desks up as I want them, get some tunes on, lay out the flip charts, make sure the coffee's in place, nip over to Lidl and buy everyone a croissant for breakfast. I woke up at 10 to 8 this morning and I'm normally in the building by 8. So minor panic, major panic. Actually, I was surprised. I was pleasantly surprised by how little I panicked. But straight out of bed, stuck my head under the tap, hopped straight in the car. The traffic wasn't too bad, so I was able to run into Lidl still and get the croissants and get in the room and get it all sorted. But I hadn't set my alarm. It's just
Set the alarm.
a
Set the
ridiculous thing to
alarm.
do. I think the only thing that saved me, I say the only thing, one of the things that saved me was that I'd been working in South Malton yesterday. And so on my way home, I knew I'd be passing the Node building. So I bought in and set up the flip charts and rearranged the tables and got everything that I could do done rather than have to do it all this morning. So fortunately, a
I
bit of
don't
forward
think that's a
planning.
coincidence. I think
Well, I got
your
away with it.
soul knew that you were going to sleep in because it wanted you to learn something, but it also wanted to look after you. And also, there's two things that are coming up from me, Alan, as you're talking here. Is I want to know what tunes you play, because this just sounds amazing, and I'm very jealous of your croissants. One thing that strikes me as well is how unfair it is that, you can just shove your head under a shower and jump out. Us women, can you imagine what I would look like if I just shoved my head under? And this is why 4 weeks earlier,
Yeah.
that this happened to me at an event that you were hosting. And I messaged you and said, Alan, I'm there. I'm coming to the breakfast. Put me down at the Imperial Hotel. No,
Yes.
the Park
It was the
Hotel.
park, wasn't it?
Yeah, the
Yes,
Park
in Barnstaple.
Hotel. We had the monthly networking. I'm like, yes, I don't have my kids. It's 7 a.m. start. I am there. I never sleep in, okay?
Nor do
My
I.
body wakes me up at 4 a.m., 4 or 5 a.m. I'm up. Probably 3 a.m. sometimes. It's quite annoying.
Nah.
And literally that morning, I woke up at 7 a.m. And I'm like, oh my goodness, it's 7 a.m. There's no way I can get, I live in Braunton. There's no way I can get to the Park Hotel. Set your alarm. It's kind of a little lesson. My new alarm, Alan, I'm just going to share it with you because I actually set myself a little bit of a new action for December actually to make the most of my energy in December
Okay.
was I have set my Lumi alarm to put light on. I don't want a buzzer. So I've set my Lumi alarm to come up. It comes on now at 6 a.m. and by 6:30 it's fully risen and it will wake me up because it's light,
Lovely. Oh,
bright
I
and it's
like the sound of
me.
that.
Oh, Alan, it's beautiful. So yeah, what a funny story that
Yeah.
and you were there and I was messaging you going, Alan, there's no way I'm really sorry. And I felt awful. So I kind of feel
It
like
is.
a little bit as well, like I'm a little bit, okay, Alan's done it now. That's all right.
Oh, we all do it. It happens to all of us. I think one of the things with managing ourselves is a key thing about it is not to beat ourselves up when we get it wrong. These things
Yes.
happen. And
Yes, we
actually,
are
just as
human
a
beings.
we are totally. And as a loosener, when we get the session started, I just put the people into groups and tell them about, the things we worry about unnecessarily. I just ask, have you ever experienced a situation where you're going somewhere and you think, I don't want to do this. I don't want to go. I don't want to go to that restaurant, see those people, whatever it might be. And you
Yeah.
come out afterwards saying, hey, that wasn't so bad. And all we do is build up concerns and these
Yeah.
worries with no evidence whatsoever. And in fact, 97% of the things that we worry about have been proven through research not to matter. All we seem to fixate on is the 3% of the stuff that does happen, rather than give ourselves a break and accept that this is all going to be fine and stop worrying about it and stop putting those hurdles and obstacles in our way and just simply just go with the flow a little bit more. And I was actually as I was sitting in the car wrestling with the Barnstable traffic, I was thinking it's going to be okay. They'll wait. They'll help me set up. It's not the end of the world. And I didn't have what I would have had many years ago. This knot in my stomach, this panic going on. But get around it. It'll be fine. Don't beat yourself up. And it was. And that's so often the case. We make life so difficult for ourselves. It's more the self-management than necessarily the time management. But we can make life so much simpler for ourselves if we acknowledge that so much that happens to us doesn't matter. It's fine. It wasn't worth worrying about. And remember that rather than simply fixate only on the bad things that happen, which are few and far between. But when the good things happen, we forget about them straight away. It's only the bad stuff that hangs around us, and that's where we pay all our attention. And it's all wrong. It's so unnecessary to do that. There's so much more good stuff we could be celebrating if we can just recognize that that's where our thoughts should be. Positive vibes, man, is it's a
Positive
corny
vibes,
phrase, but
100%. I love
totally.
that, Alan. I love that. I think, you've shared some really interesting things there, around some of the statistics and some of the numbers and
Mm,
how our brain works. And I want to dive deep into that because I want to make sure that we capture in our conversation today, your presentation, the steps that you took us through. Because for me, it was a journey of
mm.
discovery, because this is what it's all about. Right, it is time. When I talk about time mastery in step 3 of the 8-step framework, it's not about the time. It's actually about getting out of your own way and
Yes, what a
allowing
great way of putting it.
yourself
Yeah. Mm.
to step into kind of your time with your full presence, because
Yes.
the present moment is that gift that we have. That's why it's called presence, present moment. And, I really want to dive into kind of the things that you talk about. So, what is the first thing that we need to know when it comes to time?
Well, I think we should go back to the iceberg, the iceberg analogy, because if you can picture an iceberg, the tip of the iceberg, the little bit that we can see of an iceberg above the surface of the water, represents our conscious mind. And typically, at any one time, our conscious mind can only cope with between 5 and 9 inputs or thoughts at any one time. Below the waterline is the bottom half of the iceberg that we never see, but it is huge. It is enormous. And that represents our subconscious brain, all the thoughts that are going on that we don't register. So no one woke up this morning thinking, got to remember to breathe every 10 seconds and keep blinking and make sure the old ticker stays down around 55, 65 BPM. The subconscious looks after all of that for us, and it decides what gets fed up to the conscious mind as well at any one time. It decides whether or not it's going to point things out to us. The analogy I use is cars. And I ask everybody, has anyone changed their car lately? And always someone this morning, someone had changed from a battered old VW to an Audi A3. And so the question I asked them was, so when you made the decision to change to the Audi A3, were you thinking, cool, this is going to be pretty swanky. There's not many of those around. And then all of a sudden you say, oh, hang on, there's one, there's another one, there's another one. There's loads of them about. But what you hadn't done prior to that was alert your subconscious to your interest in Audi A3s. Once you've made the decision to buy one, then the subconscious is going, oh, okay, Audi A3s. Well, I keep seeing them. I just don't tell you about them. So there's one, there's another one, there's another one. And when we focus on whatever it is that we want to focus on, especially if we write goals or use affirmations, but when we have a commitment, almost a contract with ourselves to go and do something, the subconscious will support us to do it. We've just got to be aware that that's how it works. It will feed through the information that we're looking for. We've all had those moments of inspiration in the shower in the morning where the thing you've been wrestling with, all of a sudden it's crystal clear because the subconscious, two things, it's impartial, but also it works 24/7. So it keeps chewing over problems at night while you're asleep, and then it'll present the solutions in the following morning. So relating that back to time management, if we've got a clearly prioritize, excuse me, to-do list, then our subconscious will help us to focus on our biggest priorities. The challenge is actually identifying what those priorities are
Oh, I
and then
love
helping our subconscious focus in and support us to actually get those done first.
That's fantastic, because that was one of the things that you gave us more deeper tips on doing. But what stands out for me, Alan, as you're talking here, and I'm thinking about this, because I know I did this like literally. I literally kind of have this weird obsession with Tesla. And that's because people talk about Tesla all the time to me, because
Yes.
it's like energy, free energy, Tesla actually. And this is, I'm going to be talking to an astrologer next week from the
Okay.
US in Florida, about Tesla and about energy. And for some time, my mind has been focused on Teslas because a couple of people I know have driven them, and literally I like they're driving past me all the time. I'm like, just go away, Tesla.
Yes.
Actually,
There's
I
a
don't want to focus on you. How can I stop focusing on something that I don't want to see? Can you give me a tip on that? If like I'm
Actually,
literally okay, my subconscious has been awakened to Tesla. Is there a way of
mm,
not seeing things that I don't want to see if it's getting a bit annoying?
that's a great question. I know, well, firstly, the subconscious is impartial. It doesn't do yes and no. It just hears what you
It's
say.
annoying.
And if you start telling it, I don't want to focus on Teslas, all it'll hear is Teslas. There's one.
Ah,
So
this
the
is the thing, Alan. It's
yes,
the chimp brain, right? It's that
yes,
naughty. I kind of see it sometimes. I talk to my subconscious like, hey, come on, chimp. Kind of stop being cheeky. It's the cheeky
yeah,
elf.
get a grip, calm it down. So, do you know, I've got to be honest and say I don't have a definitive answer, but what I would recommend is that you refocus your attention elsewhere. So,
Yes.
if you are looking to replace your car, then focus on whatever it is that you would really like, and
So
that
I
might
was
sort of
thinking the
nudge Teslas
VW.
out the way.
You
Yeah,
know, you
yeah,
said it was like an upgrade going to Audi A3. For me, I was like, what? The VW is something I just really love.
ah,
The
they're lovely
I'm
cars,
manifesting a
definitely.
VW, Alan,
That's
like a
fantastic.
camper. So maybe I just need to be focusing on that and then I'll stop seeing Tesla.
Yeah,
Having said that, it
yeah.
just seems for me, it's the conversation about what the invention of Tesla was. I know this is a bit of a sideline, Alan, to what you're saying, but Tesla did not invent electric cars. They
Oh
invented
no.
free energy from hydrogen, and they know how to create free energy. It's been a little bit of a myth around what Tesla is and isn't, and what Elon Musk bought
Mm,
into. But that's one of the stories that my astrology guy from the US is going to bring up for me. So maybe I can't get Tesla out of my head because it's very much a big part of some of the conversations that I'm having in the energy space. But what you are telling me is really important is what we want to focus on
yeah.
has to be at the forefront of our mind.
Mm,
And that positivity, one thing that when you were talking about, if we are being a positive or negative person, and when we get one of the things that can trigger us, especially as managers or managers or entrepreneurs or anyone really, is when we get feedback that we perceive to be
yeah.
negative.
Mm,
The subconscious doesn't know the difference between good or bad. If we get feedback and it's like it's not what we're expecting, it's the worst experience in the world, even though because there's like you say, the subconscious, the chimp brain or reptilian brain, whatever you want to call that part of your mind, it's
yeah.
indifferent. It doesn't know. It just knows what you have affirmed to it in the past and what it believes is the truth. And so one thing that I was thinking I could affirm, even for me, is that all feedback is positive feedback. All
Yes,
feedback is positive because it's then how you take that feedback in that moment.
absolutely.
Because if
Yes.
you take feedback in the moment, say yesterday, one of my massage clients said, that was the most amazing massage ever. Yes, I'm super happy, but then like I'm letting someone else affect me. My happiness, yes, I'm happy, but what if it was that was the worst massage of my life? I've let myself be affected and I could get upset in that moment. We
Mm,
need to be able to not react in the moment. And then also
yeah,
when we take that feedback, all feedback is good feedback because it can make us better. It doesn't, we should
totally.
need to manage how we behave,
And actually, you
right?
say about that, one of the things that we looked at this morning in the training, as well as the time management, we looked at feedback, mainly how to give feedback that's objective and helpful and useful. But I start by asking people how they feel when they receive feedback. And
Mm.
we do a little exercise. I just get them in pairs, put hands together. So this is one person's hand, this is the other person's hand. Do decide who's A and who's B, and then I just say, A's push. And so they start pushing, and immediately the B's just push back. Just a subconscious reaction. No
Yeah.
one goes, oh, okay. Everyone pushes back. And with feedback, our instinct is to resist it and fight it,
Yeah.
which doesn't solve anything. Because one of the things with feedback is that typically, regardless of how poorly it might be delivered, there's probably a grain of truth in there, a grain of truth about what that person is suggesting. And so I offer a little acronym to manage receiving feedback called ARC, ARC. And the first one is absorb it, listen to it, let them finish, just fully listen to what they're having to say. And then the R is then actually reflect on it. Don't push back immediately, reflect on it. Be a sponge. not a rock. And they've probably been thinking about they're going to give you this feedback for a while. They've been preparing it in their mind. You're fully entitled to say, oh gosh, well, it's come as quite a shock. I think I'd like to take a little bit of time to think about that. Perhaps I could think about it overnight and talk to you tomorrow. So yeah, don't push back. Don't do the immediate reaction, the negative pushing, but just reflect on it and see what you think about it away from the heat of that immediate moment. And then the C is clarify what they're really saying throughout the conversation. Just say, oh yeah, so who was saying that, or what's that opinion based on? And yes, and what did you observe me doing? Just understand a bit more about the context of it, then go away and think about it. But as you say, learn from it. Take it, be grateful for it, and learn from it, because there will probably almost inevitably be a grain of truth in what they're saying. So we just need to be big enough to actually respond maturely, sensibly to it. Take it and learn from it. That's
I'm a crier, Alan. I'm a crier, right? Let me tell you, I am very deep emotional being because I'm such an empath.
mm,
I absorb every energy, and I can walk into a room, and I will know whether that person's energy, where it is. I can feel
that's
a
amazing.
person before they've even spoken, and I have intuition, so I know what's coming. Usually, before they've spoken and told me, they can tell me bad
Mm,
news before they've even spoken it. I'm such an empath, and I know that this is something because it happens. When you notice it, it happens every time. I know what's going to happen. I know if someone's going to give me positive or negative feedback. It doesn't really affect the way that I react in that moment sometimes because the very spoken word of it makes my because it's my conscious mind is aware of this, but my
yeah.
subconscious obviously hasn't kind of absorbed the reality of what's coming. Which is really interesting, actually. It's really interesting to think about
Mm,
it in this way, how the human body all connects and works. So
yeah.
when someone does actually confirm, this is what's happening, my initial reaction, I remember being, I'm going to tell you a story now. I remember being in a very public place. Say it was in a, I was at Thornton, and a certain friend of mine gave me some bad news. I was expecting the news. I knew it was coming. I felt their energy before it happened. They gave me this news, but I was in a public
Mm,
place.
mm,
And I was like, I sat there, and this arc thing really worked because I was in a public place. My initial reaction was I was about to cry my eyes out, right?
bless you.
And I sat there, and I remember going, I stood and smiled at me. Don't. No, it's a stupid face, right? And I remember, because this is how the subconscious worked, that even though consciously I knew that this news was coming, subconsciously, obviously, my subconscious wasn't prepared for it. And
Mm,
it wanted to cry and just burst into tears. And I was just I remember going consciously to my subconscious, don't cry, keep smiling,
get a
take
grip.
it in, reflect.
Yeah.
And in that moment, I just talked it out loud. I was like, yeah, I totally understand, like, and I remember, and then I walked away from that moment and took that feedback, right? Because it was kind of a moment of feedback, really.
Mm.
And then I went into the toilet and I cried my
Oh,
eyes out
bless you.
because you have to release that emotion.
You've got to get it out.
Hard for you to
Definitely.
lock it in. I just
Yeah,
release
totally.
it in that moment. And by doing these things, and I love the arc analogy, absorb, reflect, clarify.
Mm.
You're giving your subconscious and the conscious mind that time to catch up, right?
Yeah, and that actually that's an important
Yeah.
point you make. The subconscious works 100 times faster
Mm.
than the conscious. So it's those things that you blurt out and regret saying. It's the heart, if you like,
It's the
before the
heart. Yeah.
head comes puffing up later. Says, "Now, are you sure you meant to say
Can't
that?"
take it back now.
Yeah, too late. Yeah, too late. Yes, absolutely. And it
Yeah.
just those things that you blurt out and you do without thinking about it because the subconscious does respond so much more quickly. But it's interesting what you're saying there because I'm a great believer in setting goals and using affirmations. And I prepare myself for every training session that I do or for every coaching session that I do
Yeah.
beforehand. I stand in front of the window doing the Amy Cuddy power pose. Have you come across the Amy Cuddy TED Talk? She
No.
talks about how your body language can condition the type of person that you are. And so I just stand in a very positive pose, few deep breaths, and then I tell myself that I am loving delivering whatever it is. So this morning it was, I'm loving delivering a really great training session for the guys from this company in here. Helpful, objective, supportive, and fun. And I'm just, again, I'm briefing my subjective to talking about my subconscious. I'm briefing my subconscious to give me the support that I need it to give. And it could be that I need to tell it that I'm strong, I'm patient, I'm listening, I'm taking my time and slow to respond. If you feel a difficult situation coming up like that, just to calm it down, just to give it the direction that you want it to take, rather than it necessarily overwhelm you completely.
Oh,
Of
and I
course, it
think you've
depends
just
on it's
really
coming up.
hit a nail on the head there, especially, if you are giving someone that feedback. I know this isn't
Mm,
about time now, but actually
yeah,
it's all connected, really.
totally.
Um, maybe you could warn someone that you're going to share some news because you have that, because often in that moment, if you're about to tell someone that they're not expecting to get fired,
Yeah,
right? Or that their hours are going to reduce, or they're not performing, or whatever that negative news is, or or you're ending some sort of relationship,
yes,
and that relationship is working, people when you work with people, they become your family in that scenario
totally.
because
Yes,
people
absolutely.
like you give everything to these roles, right, in your
Yeah.
life. If it's something that you're not going to expect, it's really hard for that other person
Mm,
that is the receiver of that knowledge to react. So the way that you give feedback is
yeah.
you're actually, and that's why it's taking ownership, isn't it? And saying, as managers or managers of our life, right? Managers
Mm,
of self, it's our responsibility to make sure that when we know something's coming, do it in a kind way. Do
totally.
it in a
Yeah.
way that says, I'm going to give you time to absorb this, or you have some
Yeah.
feedback coming up. We're going to do this in a really kind way. It isn't good news. Prepare yourself. You could give someone
Mm.
something.
You can brace them.
No, it's
I'm a
coming.
great believer that if you are, as a manager, and we're drifting away from time slightly, but this is all
Mm.
relative to
It's all
relevant
relative. It's all
and
it's all
related to
connected.
feedback. I think there shouldn't be surprises when you come together for your regular review session, for example, because there should already have been a few conversations about what's happening, informal conversations,
Yeah,
and the feedback. There are various
it's
acronyms you can
fluidity.
use and approaches that start with just the very simplest of bits of feedback, and then a slightly more focused approach, then a more serious approach, and then eventually the bad news. But that should never be a surprise because you should have been having those conversations already. Because the last thing you want to do is get rid of someone. It's time consuming. It's expensive to replace them. It rocks the boat of the rest of the team dreadfully. You want everyone delivering their full potential and firing on all cylinders. And it's down to the manager to make that happen. And
Yes,
feedback's a huge part of doing that, but the right
100%. And
feedback at the right
often
time.
what came up for me, Alan, when you said that is that often you're getting to the firing stage because you haven't managed that relationship.
Total, absolutely.
You
Yes, I
can,
couldn't agree more. You've backed yourself into a corner. You've pulled them with you, and you should have
yeah.
been on top of it. You've got
If
to
you'd have
square
been
up to
having that
those tough
relationship
conversations.
constantly as
Yes,
a relationship with someone throughout that whole period of time,
yeah,
and just working with someone and realizing that you have a relationship and you're not just sat there giving out things,
absolutely.
it
And
means
I
that,
tell you what, Em, drawing this back to the broader time management thing, one of the things that managers are often putting off is having those difficult conversations. It's prioritizing the relationships within their team, and the attitudes, the behaviors of specific team members. And oh, I'll let it go this time. I'll keep an eye on it. Can I have to talk to them? we put it off, we put it off. And when it comes to prioritizing what we need to do, there's a simple mantra, getting back to the sort of things that you were saying you wanted to try. A great starting point is just make a list of everything you've got to do. And then from within that, pick out the three things that you're probably most wary of or apprehensive about or putting off and
Mm.
do them. And even if it's just one of them, the difference that will make to just free up your bandwidth will be
Yes,
amazing. And especially
Alan.
if it's a difficult conversation, go have it.
I
Go on.
thought about you yesterday,
Uh-oh.
literally, because what you talked about when you're looking at those priorities, and I want to talk to you, let's dive into like how do you really make sure that you master your time by looking at your
Mm.
priorities, you can get these things out. Is yesterday I had something to do, and I was sat there going, yeah, I should have done this first thing because Alan told me some tricks. He said, do this the first thing in the morning,
Do
do
the
it, do
worst
it the first
first.
thing, very
Yeah.
first thing, and then it's done. And, it was something that I really subconsciously didn't want to do. It
Yeah.
wasn't something I couldn't do. It wasn't something that was hard. It was something clearly subconsciously my subconscious was not happy with
Mm.
because it
And do you
made
know
me
what
feel
that was? That was
anxious.
you mentioned earlier your lizard brain, your reptilian brain. That's the bit that's trying to keep us safe. And
Mm.
that involves, no, don't do that. Leave it till tomorrow. Have chips tonight. Don't have a nice healthy salad. Gym, running, start next week. It's always just trying to make us take the easy option. And because it's part of the subconscious, it's working so much quicker than our logical, rational brain that knows we should do it. And it's kind of put its marker down way ahead of us thinking, no, hang on, I ought to do this. Ah, well, I won't bother. And one of the challenges of managing your time is just managing your intention through consciously setting your goals, your objectives of what you want to do. For example, that thing that you were putting off and you didn't sit down and do first.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's powerful stuff.
absolutely.
And
I've
it
just
comes
I've
back to
got
what
a
we were
letter
saying
here.
before. Yeah, go on.
We get letters through the post now.
Ah,
You have to do your confirmation statement for your limited company.
wow.
You know, things like that for me. I don't know why. Anything kind of official. Obviously, my reptilian brain thinks that it's not safe
Yeah.
for me to do anything official because
Mm,
I don't know if it's the rebel in me, I'm like, oh, it's official. It's obviously they're bad, blah, blah.
yeah,
I don't know
Sodom then.
what's going on because often we don't really know what's
Yes.
going on. So this was a different example, putting off even just logging on and looking at the blooming
Mm,
website of
yeah.
where to do this. And I ended up, and this is so funny. You talked about this in the talk. I know we're going through it in a really funny, fluid way, but you talked about it. Can you do it now? And is it going to take you more to delegate it? Because we talked about
Yeah.
delegating, right? In
But
the
it's the
time
2 minute
mastery.
rule. If you can do something in 2 minutes, just do it rather than put it in a pile or add it to your to-do list or
Yeah, so
drag
I
the
added
email
it
into
to
an
my to-do
inbox.
list, which took me
Just,
time. And then um I messaged somebody to say, I've got this letter. I messaged two people actually, and I went, I don't know what to do with it. And by the time I'd toed and froed, firstly one said, oh, it's really easy. You just go on the link and you just need to do this, this, and this. The other person kind of hasn't replied yet. And then I went on today and did it. It took me 2 seconds. I do need to
right.
register for a code.
Yeah.
And then you need to send me something in the post because I've never done this before. I've never had a limited company that I've managed in this way myself before. But Alan, you were right. If I'd have just sat there and opened the letter, sat down and gone,
Mm,
right, I can't deal with it now, but there's the letter. Tomorrow morning, the first thing I'm going to do is just deal with that letter, right? And that's the first 30 minutes of the day is to just deal with things I do not want to deal with.
fantastic.
It's
So get it
gone, right?
done.
So I
Yeah.
did it this
And
morning. I mean, I
and it
did
took how
message a
long?
couple
Two
of
minutes?
people.
Sorry, say that again.
I did message a few people because still clearly my reptilian brain was really unhappy. But the more we do it, the more we put that time in to deal with something that's becoming a challenge, the
Yeah.
more that we can push through
Yeah.
those subconscious barriers.
And by doing that, you're reframing your thinking as well, because you do that enough times and you think, oh, that's not a problem. Oh, that's not a problem. Hey, I managed that as well. Then your whole
Yeah.
perception of those things shift. And doing just sitting down and doing it, inevitably, it takes less time than you thought it would. Well, not inevitably, but in most situations, it takes less time than you thought it would. And it wasn't as difficult as you thought it would be. So, hey,
100%.
presto, what was I
Got
worrying
another real
about?
life story, Alan, because I think real life stories help for people that are running their businesses. So this week,
Definitely.
my domain got messed around, and it ended up causing all my email servers to break. Right?
Hmm.
I am not good at tech. I ended up driving my car to someone's house to say, "Help me." It's all gone down. One email server got restored by the person that was managing my web domain. The other one wasn't, and it was on Gmail. I don't understand G Suite.
Oh,
I
yeah.
even was like calling Emily. I was like, because Emily is my VA. I was then calling
Yes.
Nigel at Restart.
Oh, right.
I
Yeah.
called all these people. I ended up driving to I actually drove to my ex-husband's house, soon to be ex-husband's house, because he's really good at this stuff. And I was like, help me.
Uh,
And I sat down and he went, have you tried phoning GoDaddy? Because they're really
who are
helpful.
your web hosts?
Yeah. So I just phoned them up and within 5 minutes they told me how to fix
Yeah.
everything.
And do you know what you're doing here? You've got to take the risk, if you will. You've got to challenge yourself every time to step out of your comfort zone because that lizard brain is telling you, no, 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 no. Don't want to do that. You've
Mm.
just got to step out of that comfort zone and challenge yourself.
Because you can't do
And
it.
yeah, well, you can.
Well, you can. It's saying it thinks you can. It thinks it's a danger to deal with it, maybe yourself or
Yeah.
something, or that you can't do it, that you're bad at tech. I literally have been telling myself my whole
Mm.
life that
Oh,
I'm
we're
bad.
full of excuses and justifications. And
Mm.
sometimes you've just got to hold your nose and jump in. Very
Sometimes,
easy
and
to
I think that's
say,
really
very
interesting,
hard to
Alan. We spend
do.
our whole time trying to figure out what we're thinking rather
Mm.
than just saying, I'm not going to figure it out. I'm just going to create that new narrative. I'm going to
I'm just
create
going to
that
do
new
it.
affirmation. I'm just
Yeah.
going to do it
I,
differently and
I'll give you a
challenge that
story.
brain over and over and over again until it starts to calm the flip down.
Yes. And you shift your way of thinking. I said this morning, when I realized it was 10 to 8, there was a time when I'd have gone into absolute hysterical panic. My guts would have been knotted tight. And I thought, well, not to worry. It'll be all right. I got to move on. I mean, I was out of the house within 10 minutes. And I was in here and it all worked out and all in good time. But sometimes you've just got to do it and you've got to challenge yourself to do it. And this training course that I mentioned, in fact, the very company that I've been working with today, wonderful web mob called Get Better, and they're a Klaviyo agency, so they're focused on direct marketing. And the boss here, Rich, had asked me about coaching a couple of his colleagues, and for whatever reason, it didn't come to pass. And for one of them, I'd said, no, they don't need coaching. They need a training course. It's the thing I'm thinking of doing. And so he said, right, when? I said, well, I haven't got it together quite yet. When? He said. He really put me on the spot. So I thought about it over the weekend. And on the Monday morning, I came in here, I booked the dates for the course and thought, right, that's it, son. You've got to do it now because the dates are in the
Yeah.
diary and you've told Rich. So I sort of threw myself off a metaphorical cliff and it was the best cliff I ever jumped off.
Oh,
And it's worked
fantastic.
incredibly well since. And I just had to break down that psychological barrier, overcome that fear. I had to feel the fear and do it anyway.
And become fearless.
In that
Because the more
instance.
you do
And
that, you
that's
become fearless.
exactly. Yeah, totally.
Becoming
Yeah.
people see spout becoming fearless a lot out there, help do this and become fearless. And it can feel like a unicorn goal for many people, right? Because it feels
Mm.
so far-fetched, especially when you've gone
Mm.
through your whole life and people have told you that it's
Yeah.
normal to have anxiety, it's normal to be this way, it shows you care. It's not normal. We need to rewire our brains, the way
Totally.
that everything works. We need to really take control of ourselves. And it's not about being completely always in control. It's
No,
actually
but it's just a
a
managing
control, but
ourselves.
managing our emotions and
Yeah.
doing it
And it's up
anyway.
to us. We
Ridiculous.
we busily blame anything and everyone else when the reality is no, the ball is in our court. It's that thing I mentioned earlier. It's 10% what happens and 90% how we choose to respond to it. And it takes time. It's taken me years to shift my thinking, my approach. It's a long old story, but I think I've changed almost beyond recognition to myself over the last 12 years. And it's been a slow but steady process. And I'm intrigued as to where it's going to end up because I've got a sense of where I'm headed for. I could do with a bit more clarity on it, but it's all kind of involved doing new, different things that I've not done before. And where before I'd have thought, "Ooh, can't do it. No, I won't." Now I'm excited about it.
Oh,
Where's it going to
yes.
take me? Where's this journey going to go?
Doesn't everyone want to live where their emotions about the unknown and about the future is
Mm,
excitement rather than dread?
yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Because that's what the
Absolutely.
human experience should be about. It should be about
Totally.
triggering the feeling of excitement that we don't know where this path is
Mm,
taking us because nobody ever really knows.
totally.
And nobody knows what's going to happen tomorrow.
And that's why we like to stay put because we know where we are at the moment. We're not comfortable with stepping into supposedly the unknown. It's easier to stay in the comfort zone of what happened last time and it was awful. Therefore, it will be awful next time. And just to hang on to that rather than, okay, that didn't work. What can I change? What can I try differently? How can I approach this from a different perspective? Who can I talk to? Where could I get some help or some support from? But either way, it's all of it is stepping out and pushing forward,
And
making
that's
the
why your
effort
alarm
to.
didn't go off this morning, Alan. Every day, your soul is teaching you a lesson, and your lesson was, look, we've reminded you that it's okay.
Well, I knew I was completely knackered. I had a great sleep, and I think maybe it was just letting me finish off that big sleep and still getting me
It was
in today.
prioritizing sleep because it
Yeah,
already decided it was going to drop off all the things you needed, and all you needed to do was shove your head under the shower, right?
yeah. I
So
did. It's under a tap, literally.
let's finish because we've
Yes,
got, I want to kind of keep it to within the hour for the
sure,
guys. Let's just finish by some little simple tips on how we can get
sure.
really clear, how we can prioritize ourselves, and how we can really leave with something that's like a little bit of a way forwards for us to change our beingness and be more in self.
Brilliant.
Okay?
Yeah, sure. Okay. Well, I've got well, a load of suggestions, but let me focus on a couple of things. We said about the importance of writing down everything you've got to do, and then picking out from that list of everything the things that you are most putting off or afraid of and doing them. But you can't do it all at once. And so it can help to just draw a cross on a piece of paper so that you've got four quarters on that piece of paper. The top left-hand corner will be for anything that is urgent and important. The top right-hand corner will be for anything that's urgent, sorry, for important, anything that's important and not urgent. And then down in the bottom left-hand corner, it's not important but urgent. And the bottom right-hand corner, not important, not urgent. So you've got four quadrants there. And the top left-hand corner is the stuff that you've got to do now. There are deadlines on you. There are pressing things that need sorting out. There are timings you've got to hit and stuff that just needs to be sorted. And we've all got that. So we've got to get it done. But in that top right-hand corner, those are the big juicy projects like promoting my course and setting dates for next year, building some relationships, establishing a broader strategic plan that I've been sort of wrestling with for a while. It's the stuff that is really important, but doesn't necessarily need doing today. And the trick is not to leave that stuff and leave it until it goes across into the urgent and important quadrant, but to get it done in bits and in pieces and acknowledge that it's important. And one of the great ways of doing that is just to make little appointments with yourself to do it in your calendar. And it could be that you set aside each morning. If you're at your desk, say by 8 o'clock, then it's easier for us self-employed when we're working from home and what have you. Just set aside that first hour and focus on one of those priorities and just do it. And
I
then
love
allow
that,
yourself to,
Alan.
yeah,
When I wrote this down, Alan,
go on.
when you write, firstly, I'm going to put my little elf hat on here and flip it into how I think about this. When you
Yeah.
write everything down, you're taking everything out of your mind because
Yeah.
we carry this, and this is what makes our mind really busy. You cannot be in the present moment listening to someone's conversation if you are thinking about a to-do list because it's in here.
Yeah. Get
It's
it
going
down
to
on
stress
paper.
you out. It's going to exhaust you. You're not going to sleep. You literally, and this is what I
Yeah.
talk about, you cannot get to a place of bliss in your life if you are constantly in a state of fear. And you're in
Yes.
fear when you're constantly in your mind because you have your to-do list here and
Yeah.
your brain doesn't know what to do with it. It doesn't know how to prioritize.
Mm.
It doesn't know this. It's just in complete state. So often when we do that and we dump it into a to-do,
Brain
like
dump. Yeah.
it's like a brain dump, and you see all the things you need to do, and then you can start to create a simple plan or a roadmap.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
you're and this is a really simple way of creating a plan or a roadmap that's
Mm.
strategic to you without having to go and do a financial plan or whatever, all the things that I tell you to do,
No,
right?
it's just
A
your
really,
stuff. It's your stuff you've got to do.
it's your stuff, right?
There's a great technique you can use for this, Em. Think about where you want to be in 3 hours, 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months, and 3 years. And then start slotting in your to-dos into those categories. Because there's stuff you've got to do now. There's stuff that's got to be done in the next couple of days. And then in 3 weeks' time, well, I'm going to have my feet up. So I want everything done and sorted while I'm off
You
having
can create
enjoyment.
different lists as well to help you with
Totally.
the categories, right? But this is the
Yes.
thing. I actually like one list because one of the things that we're thinking of here is that we're trying to go, some things are important but not urgent. And some of those
Yes.
future things are important but not urgent. Those are wealth. That's your wealth.
For sure. Yes,
For
totally.
sure. Whereas your urgent and important moves you into a state of fight, flight, and freeze
Mm,
because you are in a state of stress response because it's
yeah.
become urgent and important. And now you've got a deadline. And anything with a
Yeah.
dead in it, words are spells. It's your brain doesn't know that you're not going to die.
Mm,
It puts you into a state of fight, flight, and freeze response. That's why your cortisol is up. That's why you're not sleeping. And that is why you're in a state of stress. So that is why, and this is great, Alan. What a way to finish. And this is how my brain, I love the way that you do it. And then I bring all my crazy mindset into it, is the fact that then if we have that list and we then
yeah.
categorize and pick what is urgent and important, do
Yeah.
it the very first thing, get it out of the way. Then pick the wealth thing that's important but maybe not urgent and ring fence time block in your diary to do some of
Totally.
that every single day in
Yes.
your diary because
Yes.
you are then telling your mind that it's a priority and you're not going to put it off. You're not going to move
Mm.
it. It's going to be there. And I do this. I put belly dance in. So I'm learning to belly dance.
Oh,
It's
really?
it's
Fantastic.
you know what, I would even probably put it in the category of I'm not even sure it's urgent really because
But it's
there is a bit
important.
of a
No, I'd
deadline
say
because
that's
I've got to do
quadrant
it in
two.
7 weeks.
It's
There is a
important, but
deadline.
it's
There's
not
7 weeks to
urgent.
get the beginner's certification, but I'm doing it purely
Yeah.
for me, for my wealth, right?
Brilliant.
And
Brilliant.
so it's in the diary, but it's in there, but sometimes it gets moved, but it can't leave the week,
Mm.
right? It's important, but not urgent, as in if something came in like you're going to get a fine if you don't do this. This is, and
Yes. Then
therefore,
you've got to
over
get it done.
time, we're not in fight, flight, freeze
Mm.
because
No,
we're
that's the
learning to
perfect
deal
approach to
with
it.
the stuff that comes in
Yeah.
that's stressful. We're teaching our mind how to deal with it in that morning time. And then
Got
we're
it.
also making sure that things don't become that. And also
Yeah.
we're prioritizing what's important. So we create a beautiful life for ourselves,
And I
right?
tell you what, Em, there's another study. I spare the detail, but in essence, what it says is that you're 40% more likely to get something done if you've made an appointment with yourself to do it. Because
Yeah.
then it's there, it's waiting for you at 2 o'clock this
Yeah.
afternoon or 4 o'clock or whenever. And so you won't put it off. So just by slotting those things into your diary, even if it's a few weeks ahead, then that's planning, that's long-term planning. And if it's important, but not, and you can leave it for a couple of weeks and it falls out of your head because it's taken care of. It's written down. It's allocated.
Oh, Alan, I mean, it's wonderful. These tips, even though this is what I do all the time in the mindset, because I understand it and I teach it, my
Yeah.
practical application does go AWOL, right? Especially in the moment
I
of
can relate to
stress.
that.
You've seen me when I've been in a state of stress. I've had a right old year of it, really, as well. And I
You
think
have.
that's another thing to mention that when you go through a time of trauma and your cortisol is already high,
Mm,
sometimes even the things that you could deal with before become overwhelming because your
yes.
emotions are in a different state. And so it's acknowledging that that's
Yeah.
okay. And that maybe sometimes you have to call in extra support and help.
Oh, for
Then that's
sure.
the
Yeah.
conversation. And I think that's why it's so important that as managers, we ask if someone's going through something and also be
Definitely. Yeah.
confident to share with people, I'm going through this. I need extra support. Don't want to be a
Yeah.
victim. I just need you to know it takes me a little bit more time
Mm.
than normal because I'm going through this in here.
Yeah.
You don't need to know about it, but
And
right.
we build up trust with people through their openness and their honesty.
Yeah.
And that's all part of it. And no one wants to be managed by someone who's arbitrarily dictating to everyone and you don't know anything about them and they don't know anything about you. It's just the worst possible relationship. So if you can have that sharing, that openness, that honesty, it can make such a difference in a working relationship like that. It really can.
And Alan, I just to finish off, I have one more question I always ask people when they come on
Go
the
on.
show. But before we get to that question, I just want to say I've seen you transform even in the time that I've known you in North Devon. It's been so noticeable how, you know, you're just so aware of other people's goings on. But not only are you aware, you make time for other people's goings on. You've made time for me. And I think that is not everyone, you can't often teach people to be that person. People have to want to be
Got to
that
choose to
person.
be it, I guess.
Yes,
Well, that's very kind of you, and thank you.
you're
I really
welcome.
appreciate that. I
You're
really
welcome. I
appreciate it.
think, if people are hearing this and and they're wanting to be that better manager, and you want to work with someone like Alan because Alan really has that life experience, really implements everything he talks about in his own life and that's what I think creates authenticity and that's what I believe in massively. And then you know, you show up even if you have to put your head under the shower and get there,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
have
I
real,
made it.
you won't, you're real and that's what people need
Oh,
to be when they're going to be a real manager or teach their teams to be more connected. They need
yeah. Be
realness in them
human. Be
and you are
themselves. Be true.
100% a human
Oh,
beautiful
bless you.
being.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
my final question is, what does wealth mean to you? If you could explain wealth to me, what does wealth mean to you?
For me personally, my wealth lies in my family. I've got three beautiful children who are out there living their own lives. We don't see so much of them now, but beautiful children and the warmth of a family and a family home that they can come back to anytime they wish. And I came across a phrase recently where the author was talking about how important it is to have enough, not more and more and more and special Black Friday deals that you don't really need, but to have enough and to know that you have enough. And that's, I think for me, that's as wealthy as you can be. If you're comfortable with what you have, we all want more, but to know that you have enough and that those that are most important to you are loved, cared for, doing all right, you can help. And for me, that's the ultimate wealth. It really is.
Have enough and to be enough to say I am enough.
Yes,
Bringing
that's the
it
point.
always
Yeah.
back to self, right?
And yes, and
And
to
knowing that
know.
you are already enough.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Self back to the self elf.
Thank you, Alan. And if anyone does want to get in touch with Alan, his links are all in the show notes. Connect with Alan. Alan's a beautiful human. If you've got any questions after today, I'm sure Alan will be open to receiving them. Thank you,
Oh,
Alan.
very much so. It's my pleasure. And thank you. Thank you very much indeed.
Namaste.